Hello, hello. 1.33.2 is out today, and I thought it'd be a little bit of fun just to have a look through the changes and just pick out anything that tickles my fancy. The Chinese kingdom government reform now gives -100 opinion of countries of the same culture and culture group. It was originally religion, and lots of people, myself included, posted in the thread saying that's not going to work because then they'll end up conquering Korea as well, which doesn't make any sense. But here's the big one for me. The Great Mongol Horde government now gives plus 50% cavalry to infantry ratio, so you are no longer locked to be Tengri to enjoy 100% cavalry fund. That's awesome, because Tengri is nice and all, and the 100% cavalry bonus is awesome, obviously, but other religions have better bonuses than Tengri. There's just pure flavorless Tengri. So it's really cool that you have to from the Mongol Empire first, but it's like your reward is that you get all cavalry all the time, whilst enjoying the benefits of, say, Catholicism or Orthodox or Sunni, or I guess even Buddhism. But yeah, you can make use of monuments that you wouldn't be able to otherwise as Tengri, maybe, possibly. I don't know. To be honest, I've hardly played with monuments at all, so I don't really know what the good ones are, what the best things are, because I skipped a couple of patches due to the reasons. So they've done a load of balancing with harmony as well. New events for the Alteringa religion, no one gives a shit. Reworked the harmonization. Okay, yes. So there's harmonization now. The harmony modifiers. Yeah, it's becomes this amazing composite religion. It looks like it'll be a lot of fun, honestly. And here we go. The modifiers from the harmonized religions have been buffed. So land battles are a lot different now. The fire and shock pips now affect morale damage, which means that it's not. They used to just really affect how many troops you killed, and then morale would be a separate thing going on that could be affected by how many troops were killed as well, but it was like they did morale damage separately from fire and shock damage. But now fire and shock pips now affect morale damage too, which is interesting, and the back row troops take 40% of the regular morale damage. So stack stuffing is now the meta, really, because it's not. It used to be that you wouldn't go into battle, say, with 40 combat width with 100 regiments of infantry and 40 cannons, or 100 regiments of infantry or 100 regiments of cannons, because they'd all end up deploying weird. You'd have to send your infantry in first, and then 40 infantry first, and then 40 cannons, and then reinforce to boost the morale. But now actually, the front row and the cannons are locked to the back row as well, so the front row and the back row are two separate things. You can just send in at whatever stack you want. And it used to be that the morale of the whole stack would be affected by the losses in battle. Now only the troops in battle suffer morale damage, so you don't need to micromanage the reinforcement is the idea. I don't know how it plays, it'd be interesting to see, but that's certainly the idea, that you can literally just send in a huge stack, and the kind of what used to be the micro of managing the morale and the deployment should now be taken care of by the game, I hope. Stated but not full chord provinces have a governing cost of 50% instead of 25, so it kind of punishes you from stating things for the benefits and just leaving it uncored, so I think that's fair balance. Council of Trent concludes with the majority vote. That's good, because it used to be the Pope or whoever could just pick whatever he wanted. Being a hegemony decreases the opinion of other countries around you by 50 instead of 100. That's useful, because that's quite a huge modifier. Or it was, the 100. A centralised state, I'll be honest, don't really know what that does. I haven't used it. Honestly, like I said, I skipped a patch, so I'm not au fait with these mechanics personally. I've read that the meta is just to kind of steal all the development back to your capital, obviously, because there's less dev cost there. Not dev cost, governing cost. But I've not looked into it too deeply. Colonial nations spend more money on colonists, that's quite nice. I hope they don't go into debt though. Tune down fort building, especially when on border and next to existing fort. Yes, that's the kind of thing I'm not looking forward to in this patch, is that they've made the AI build more forts, but a lot of in all their test screenshots, there was just a horrible maze of forts. I don't know who thought that was a good idea, so hopefully they've sorted that out now. They've taught the AI that Prussia is OP. That's quite funny. They fixed a bug where the AI thought coordinated attack and instead sent individual armies to die. So that, yeah, I've seen that a lot actually, so that's interesting that was a definite bug that they fixed. Then also consolidate regiments. This is the power of Gnevom. I knew we'd sort out the AI. Unfortunately, makes it harder for us. As you can see here, they'll consider nearby units more when considering a battle. The game's about to get harder. Made AI care about the things they should care about for the mandate. That's good. They make them aggressive towards countries that refuse to pay tribute. There's a lot of buffs for the Celestial Emperor, and for unifying China, as I'm sure people have seen in the dev diaries, due to that opinion modifier, it stops them all allying each other and making what is affectionately known as a hug box. They should now just all hate each other and try to conquer it all, which is cool. I wish there was a way to form like a Zhongyou, or maybe change your name to China after a certain date or something like that, just to say, because after a certain point you're not you've modernized, you're not the Shun dynasty or the Ming dynasty or the Wu dynasty or whatever anymore. You're the Middle Kingdom now. Colonial nations without debt are now likely to spend all subsidies they get on colonists. That's really cool. As well as those changes above that make them more likely to colonize at all, you can also, if you have a poor nation, just give them the money and know that they'll spend it on colonists and not use it to, I don't know, build a workshop or something. Coordinated offensives will focus on this AI stuff is hopefully going to make them a lot more challenging. I say hopefully, but it's going to be pain for us. I would just say improved AI understanding of native uprising risks, less Africans getting stack wiped taking a shortcut. Made AI less likely to mothball forts when risky. It was as if 1,000 Byzantium campaigns cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced. Somewhat more competent at naval invasions for large empires. I'll believe it when I see it. Though to be fair, that's been a lot better for a long time now. It's a bit of a meme to joke about it, but it used to be literally if your enemy had allied England, you could just completely discount them because you knew they wouldn't land troops. But now the AI does actually do so. So now they've made them better. That is actually a little bit worrying for us humans. Added alert for when a monument could be upgraded. That's pretty cool for those of us who forget the monuments exist on a regular basis. Removed message for losing a claim if the province is already a core of yours. Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder, though, if we might still want to know about the claims if we'd only made it into a territorial core. It's not. I think it's better if you had to choose one or the other, you'd choose to just remove it. But I do wonder that. Piety accelerator. Move your piety towards legalism or mysticism, or away or towards, depending on where your is to start with. Okay, a bit like finding a level place for it, or the prestige decay sort of thing. Forming the Roman Empire will now convert all of your culture group to the Roman culture instead of just your primary culture. That's pretty cool. I do feel like, personally, if it was me, that should only happen if you're Greek or Italian. In game, I mean, not in real life. But that's fine. Gameplay reasons, role playing, they can all change. It's all good. A new decision has been added which allows Korean, Tibetan, the whole culture group, and Vietnamese countries to Sinicize their culture, changing the primary culture in all of its provinces to a custom culture, which is part of the Chinese culture group, e.g. Sino-Korean, Sino-Mongolic, or whatever I can't remember what they've called it, Sino-Altaic. So that's pretty cool. It's similar to what happens with Jurchen becoming Manchu, which is part of the Chinese group. It just means you can actually conquer China and have it all be your accepted culture, which is nice. And it reflects the country's decision to move towards a Chinese-centered path as well, which is awesome. Good for people like Yuan, definitely. Speaking of which, there's a note here. Forming Yuan will now Sinicize the Mongol cultures, and it does all of them, not just Mongol, which is nice. Very nice. Forming Manchuria as a tributary now triggers an event for the Overlord, which removes 50 mandate and releases Manchuria. So that's pretty neat for Qing campaigns. I do hope that doesn't give us a truce, because one of the best things about turning on Ming is that you don't get a truce with them when you cancel the tributary status. The Manchu formation decision now actually tells you how many of the 20 you have to stop you going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like I was doing. So that's good. France will no longer declare war upon Burgundy during the Burgundian inheritance incident, while France is already at war with Burgundy's overlord. Yo, dog, I heard you liked Burgundian inheritances. Burgundian's inheritance. They've added something here where, as Ming, during the crisis, when you release some of the other minor tags, you can actually tag switch to them, which is an easy way to play as them. Oh, this is brilliant. This was one of my huge hates during the Qing game. The Centre of Revolution can no longer spawn within the Celestial Empire, as the Emperor of China cannot go through the revolution disaster. There was nothing you could do about it. You couldn't stamp it out, you couldn't accept it, you just had to live with it. It was horrible. Thank God for that. This is a cool one as well. The Surrender of Main event now has a custom CB, which acts as a restoration of PU CB for England, but is like a reconquest CB for France. And that also, I think, means big, or as I call it, blig blue blob got a lot easier, because you can take all those cores as a reconquest war instead of dealing with the AE and not taking all of them or something. That's excellent. Might be a France campaign soon. The Swiss events about Calvin can now only trigger in the Age of Reformation in order to prevent him returning from his grave. More Celestial buffing. Events which were locked behind Ming are now available to the Celestial Emperor or to a Chinese country in case the Celestial Emperor ceases to exist. Which is cool, because it was only Ming got a lot of these events, but now anyone gets them if they're the Emperor, that's good. Forming Manchuria will now trigger an event for Korea, which allows them to become the tributary of Manchuria in exchange for every province in the Korean peninsula held by Manchuria. Or Manchu as they're known in game. If Manchu is controlled by a player, then a second event will fire, which asks the player if they want to accept Korea as their tributary in the first place. Now, I'm worried about that, because maybe we'll have to test this, because does that mean as Manchu, you conquer Alpha Korea to get the unguarded nomadic frontier, and then will Korea just get those provinces back? Can you choose? It does. I feel like the player should get a choice first rather than afterwards, but we'll have to test that one. In a similar vein to the Chinese miners, the Netherlands declaring independence allows you to play as the Netherlands as well. And Dutch mobilization gives them 500 ducats and the general with 80 tradition. He probably gets it all in maneuver. Portugal's ideas have been rebalanced, making them more competitive compared to their neighbours. I wonder if they've given them some military ideas, because they're meant to be trade, aren't they? We'll have to check that one out later. The ideas of the Roman Empire have been buffed to get on par with the ideas of the Holy Roman Empire. That's pretty exciting. Look at this. Finishing maritime ideas gives marine force limit. They're really pushing marines. No one cares about them. And espionage ideas have been moved around as well. You can cross-reference this with the wiki in your own time. But it's some interesting things. Siege ability, it becomes ever more viable, espionage ideas. I wish they'd call it something else. It ain't espionage. There should be an espionage ideas rather than locking it behind tech, because you just end up with the permanent +2 unrest in late game because everyone just uses that espionage against you. It should be locked behind espionage ideas, but other things should be in diplotech to make it worthwhile, because they did that to make you take dip tech, but no one cares about those actions, so no one takes it still. Should be things like maybe tolerance of different cultures and things like that, perhaps. Make it have more of an impact on trade, perhaps. Castile now gained its PUCB against Portugal later in the mission tree, which allows Portugal to survive longer than 100 years as an independent nation. Forming Rum gives you the Ottoman missions. That's pretty cool, because you're basically just Ottomans version 2, aren't you? Well, I guess you could say Ottomans were Rum version 1. Here's something. The Sinicized cultures don't get Ming's missions, but the other Chinese cultures do. I'm not sure if that contradicts it further up when they said it was Celestial Emperor. It'll go to a Chinese nation if there's no Celestial Emperor. So I don't know if a Sinicized Celestial Emperor will get the missions or not. Let's have to play and find out. The Korean mission build to force limit revokes inward perfection if done by a player, due to the cooldown, which would force players to wait 25 years before they can revoke it on their own. Now, I think when I played Korea, there wasn't a cooldown, because you could literally just revoke it day one and you'd be fine. So perhaps I might be misremembering, but I think maybe the cooldowns were a change in the patch I didn't play. But that's good, because it's just otherwise it stops the player just having to wait around, but it keeps the AI doing what it should. The Manchu mission Invade Joseon can now be completed when Korea is a tributary state. Cool. To link in with the changes above that I was worried about. Side note, Korea should be called Joseon, and then the same way that, for example, Ming can rename itself to Zhongguo or China or whatever, Joseon should be able to rename itself to Korea later on in the game. That's Christian's plans for the game. I'm not one of the devs, but whatever. The province modifier Paektu Mountain of Jiangsu requires you to have Jiangsu and Gyeongseong, which I think is the fort, the Korean fort opposite the mountain range. Just makes it a bit harder to get. And the new holder of the mandate gets reduction in monthly devastation to keep hold of the mandate easier, which is nice. Korea's got buffed here, as you can see, got more stats in their air, and oh wow, plus. So it hasn't gone to 564 dev. It's got +5, +6, plus. Jesus, Korea's one of those games that I'd love to replay because I had so much fun. It seems like now's the time. Nivre has been shifted out of, was it Manchurian before? It's been added to Kamchatkan now. And yeah, they've changed a few. Someone made a suggestion on the forums that they took most elements from, changing some of the province names and a few country names as well. Here we are, set up with their own provinces and countries, etc. There's definitely a Manchu game coming up soon. I got 2 Manchu games I want to do. I want to do a Manchu one state, massive conquest thing, and I want to do a colonial Qing. We'll get to them one day. The Kurils and Sakhalin are now owned core provinces of Ainu, which is very interesting. It'll change kind of the complexion of that part of the world a little bit. It does also mean you don't need to take expansion if you want to colonize that one province you get a core on as Manchuria, as Manchu. The ruler of AQ has remembered that he is the older brother and is now 10 years older. Funny when you forget these things, isn't it? Korchin starts as a tributary state of Ming in order to not get all of the Jurchen obliterated by Ming when they ally Korchin. I see. So one, you might say like one of the Jurchen tribes would ally Korchin, a second Jurchen tribe would attack the first tribe and end up at war with Ming. Okay, that makes sense. Didn't understand what that meant when I first read it. It does make things a bit more difficult though in terms of conquering land, because Korchin was always someone you could conquer for some free real estate. Confucian and Tengri countries, when you syncretize or harmonize with a religion, you gain access to their monuments. And if you harmonize Buddhism or Dharmic faith as a Confucian country, you can now get the benefit of a religion which is Hindu but would require you to be Buddhism. So they're all one big happy family, basically. Oh, Inward Perfection now has a 25 years cooldown. It was added in this patch. Okay, that explains that. And the revolutionary target has been changed slightly, gives you morale of navies, and instead of a huge force limit modifier, it gets you manpower and sailor recovery speed, which does make sense, honestly, because it's like people willing to fight for the right to party. Colonialism. So this one here. Previously, you just had to have an explorer. You had to have unlocked the quest for the New World idea from exploration ideas and discovered the New World. They changed it for you to actually require a colony in the New World now. Now they've changed it again, so you don't need quest for the New World. You just need to have an explorer. So if you have an explorer and you have provinces in the New World, then you don't need to take exploration ideas if you have found the New World via some other means. The revolution is much less likely to spread to a very stable monarchy, 2 stab and 90 legitimacy. So if you keep your country in good nick, you're less likely to get revolutions, which is quite cool. And the revolution itself actually can spawn with some other, if rebels occupy a lot of your country as well, which makes sense too. Revolutionary zeal now gives discipline. That's good, because it was before you would lose absolutism and gain revolutionary zeal, which would give you units that had discipline, or I think they'd have reduced shock damage or something, didn't they? Shock and fire damage. So now it gives you discipline 2, which is good, because it was just a nerf getting rid of absolutism. I think it gives you admin efficiency, revolutionary zeal as well, if I remember rightly. So not so much of a nerf anymore. Sino Take gives you access to banners, so if you form the Mongol Empire after Sinicizing, you don't lose banners. And they've also made it here more likely for Ming to explode by making them more likely to trigger nationalist rebels and to pick the options which spawns more nationalist rebels. See, I've never played as a Muslim, honestly, but playing guaranteeing dhimmi authority is not taken by a subject. So if you have religious ideas and you have a subject that has dhimmi, and say you're going for a one faith, your subject might want to convert the land because you want to integrate them, but your subject guarantees the dhimmi autonomy, which means they don't convert things. But now they won't do that if you have religious ideas, which indicates that you want to convert things, which is quite nice. Can no longer annihilate powerful AI enemies through multiple peace deals with all of your allies, as they'll unconditionally surrender if on minus 100% war score, and won't accept any other peace offers until the war leader has peaced out. Fort garrisons are refilled when they revert back. Okay. So yeah, I'm curious to see about this. There was a lot of discussion on the forums about this minus 100, this unconditional surrender thing. It certainly makes it harder to dismantle. I think the exact use case they've mentioned there is not something I've ever done, but I think it will lead to a lot of war exhaustion across the player base. Merc companies scale nicer for big nations, only take total dev into account up to a maximum amount. So there's still variety in company size. That's good, because it would be like sometimes you only want a couple of them, like a small little army to deal with some rebels or something, and then you go into the macro builder and all you can get is like 100 regiments at a time or something. Royal marriage makes sure you discover each other's capitals. That's good, because I've had this before where someone's offered me a marriage, I've accepted it, but I don't know who they are. It's a bit silly. Forced tributary CB disables taking provinces. That makes perfect sense. There was a bit of hoo-ha about disabling that for subjugation CBs as well, and PU CBs, which thankfully they've kind of walked back on. You can take provinces when you make someone a vassal or a PU. Did they do it for PU as well? I can't remember. They definitely did it for vassal, but you have to actually vassalize them first, and then you can take provinces. So Aztec is still on, don't worry. But yeah, I think that makes sense as well. Advisor's no longer missing from advisor pool. I did encounter that a few times where it said you got an advisor and he wasn't there. That's good that that's fixed. AE predicted the peace deal window is accurate. It was inaccurate? That explains a lot. You can use repair damaged ships when all ships in a fleet are damaged. That's one of my favourite buttons, that. It's really clever. If you don't know, it detaches damaged ships from a navy, sends them to port, and then when they're repaired, they'll come back to the same navy and rejoin. So I guess I guess the whole thing will go to port and then come out again. I don't know where it'll go, though. Maybe it'll just stay in port, I don't know. Condottieri do morale damage. That's quite funny that they didn't. It shows how much people use them, that no one noticed. Emperors of the HRE that are not in the HRE are displayed on the Imperial map mode. That's interesting, because it was always just the same colour, so I guess they must have added a different one. Or maybe they're hashed out but still purple. That's interesting. Fixed artillery wrongly getting deployed to the front row. I mean, that's good, because I had that in my last campaign, that they just stick the artillery on the front. I think just because they could flank, and it didn't make any difference. But of course, they've changed it now, so artillery doesn't go to the front row anyway. I don't know that that's a bug fix particularly. That's just a change they've made. Unless they changed it, and now this was a bug of that change that they fixed. Oh, who cares? Fixed weird behaviour of ships on Protect Trade mission in the Caribbean. That's interesting, because I think that did happen to me a few times. They end up like halfway across the Pacific sometimes. Pacific? No, Atlantic, the other one. Income now shown for trade companies in the subject view. That's interesting. You don't really have them for that. You don't get income in that sense. They don't pay you their income. They're your provinces, so you just get them as part of your income. But it's interesting that you can see what your most monetary trade companies are. It's nice, I suppose. New World nations stroke natives reform after the overlord of a colonial nation, not the colonial nation itself. That's good, because sometimes you want a monarchy, so you have to really rush to reform off of a province before a colonial nation forms. But it has to be a finished province, so you have to time it right. But actually now you get it from the overlords, because otherwise you just always become a republic, because the colonial nations are always republics. That's interesting. I mean, it sucks if you want to be a republic, but there you are. Strauts units cost manpower. Interesting, quite big change that they didn't make a big thing about. Expel minority works again. Yay! Stopped AI wanting more provinces despite being given the only one they want in a peace deal. That's pretty good, because that was an annoying thing. They'd only want one province. They'd have loads of participation, but they'd only want one province. If you try to give them more, they were like, we don't want this. Spain now gets a full complement of reforms when they get converted to mine religion. That's very, very strange. I don't know what that's all about. The Mongol Empire will no longer spawn rebels, similar to how other formables don't spawn rebels. Good. I'm fed up of seeing these exploits from people getting Khan, where they've just fucking done some rebel shenanigans. Emperor is now included in the Religious League map mode. I didn't know there was a Religious League map mode, to be honest. Maybe that's from the patch I skipped. That seems like it'd be very useful. Novgorod Protect Trade mission no longer cancelled on day one. That's good. I encountered that in a previous game. I'm glad they fixed it. I'd forgotten about that, to be honest. Repay loan now greyed out when not having enough money. I hope that means when you click on repay loan, it gives you a list of loans, and then that one should be greyed out. Because otherwise, why are you being prevented from looking at your loans? I feel like, I hope that's not what it sounds like. I hope I've misunderstood that, but we'll have to wait and see. Cool, so there we go. Should be a good patch. They're working on this game balance like nobody's business and fixing bugs, which I'm really pleased to see. I still think there's a lot of things from 131 that are unnecessary, but at least they are listening to us. They're working with us. When you see the patch notes on the forums, they're releasing betas to start with. That's huge. That's really good. And then people are playing it, coming back with feedback, and the devs are listening to it and going, yes, I understand. Right, yes, good. It's excellent. It's a much better relationship now with the dev team, which is awesome. They're not an indie studio anymore, but it's nice that they're trying to bring back that spirit. I'm looking forward to this patch. I'm going to be playing it probably as... do you know what? I've been wanting to play a Kazan game since like 1.11, I think. But I don't know. I did kind of have an Oirat game in mind, but we'll see. Maybe I'll play as Kazan. I'll have to wait and see. But I will see you then. Bye.